What's going on, guys? It's Cimoooooooo. So yesterday, Konami released an update to their tournament policy guidelines, and there's some really cool changes that came out of that, and I want to give you guys the overall breakdown today. If you want to see the full changes, I'll have the links down in the description for you guys to take a look for yourself. There's a short breakdown that Konami provided, as well as the full-length document if you want to go ahead and read that, but I know most of you are Yu-Gi-Oh players, and you're probably not going to, so that's why I'm making this video so that you don't have to, and you can get the overall gist of it. So first, and probably one of the biggest updates we have to look forward to is the implementation of Neuron in the competitive scope. Neuron, for people who don't know, is a companion app that you can download that has lots of cool features. You can actually build deck profiles on this app. You also have access to a life point calculator, generator for being able to roll dice, flip coins. You can even search cards, and we'll talk about that a little bit later on. But for the purposes of this section here covering Neuron kind of just talks about what you can and can't do when it comes to using it. And one of the best things about this is that we are actually able to use the life point calculator for official tournament play. That's really big. For the longest time, you haven't been able to use your phone as a calculator, but the official Neuron app does allow this. You can also use this for any sort of effect that would roll a die or flip a coin. Hell, you could probably do this to actually roll dice just before the beginning of the game, making it so that depending on what type of deck that you're playing, you can actually bring less materials with you to play the game, and I think that's overall a good thing. Now, the biggest thing that I don't like about this is right here in this section that says duelists must also keep a paper record of their life points. And the reason I don't like this is because Neuron has a built-in history tracker of the way the life points were decreased or increased throughout the course of a match. So why do you still have to keep a paper record as well? The only truly valid argument I can see for this is, I guess if you're playing a game and like mid-match your phone just dies because you weren't keeping track of like the battery life. So if that's the case, you lose the entire record of that game, and then you may not know what the player's life points are at. But at the same time, if both players are keeping track of the life points, you should still have A, the current life point total, and B, the entire log. Let's assume both players are using the Neuron app. So I feel like that kind of gets circumvented by the fact that both players are going to be taking life totals anyway. So I feel like you shouldn't still need to have a paper record as well. Maybe this is just for like record keeping purposes. I don't know. You guys can let me know what you think down in the comments, but I feel like they should do away with this because I feel like it's really unnecessary. So keeping with the theme of Neuron, we're going to talk about deck registration. And when I first saw this, I thought this was exactly what I wanted out of Neuron from a deck registration perspective. But as I read it, I became more and more disappointed, and you'll see why. So as you can see in the deck registration section, there is a section now for Neuron. So it says select and view your deck, then scroll down to the save list button. Clicking this button will create a JPEG of your deck list, which you can email to yourself, then print out before heading to the event. And it says Neuron will not fill out all the tournament details. You can't submit an electronic copy of your deck list, and you won't have access to a printer, and you can't edit the JPEG file. So what I was hoping this was gonna say is that you could actually edit and submit your deck list online and just register for a tournament online as well. Now, I will give them credit that they made it that you can convert any of your deck lists into a printable format that will allow you to then ultimately take that list to a tournament that is an acceptable document. But again, I feel like that's just adding a middleman for no reason when, especially in 2020, we could easily just be submitting these deck lists electronically and be saving not only a ton of time, but a ton of paper in the process. It's a Konami first-party app. They should just be able to do that immediately. So for all you Neuron users out there, you can now just immediately print your deck list straight from Neuron, but I think most of us are still just going to be using stuff like Dueling Book because we've been doing that for most of the time regardless. Now, this might be the biggest and most important change of the entire video, and it doesn't even necessarily apply to gameplay specifically, but it's a very important aspect of it: sleeves. So we're here in section G talking about sleeves, and it says right here, you may choose to use a second sleeve, otherwise known as double sleeving, on each of your cards, providing you abide by the following additional rules. So it says one of the additional sleeves must be clear. The clear sleeve may have a brand watermark or artwork so long as it does not interfere with the readability of the card. The additional clear sleeve may not have a holographic pattern on the front. The additional clear sleeve must be placed onto the card opposite to the regular sleeve so that the card is sealed inside the two sleeves, and you may only have one card in each pair of sleeves. Can I just say, I absolutely adore that they had to codify that you can only have one card in each pair of sleeves so that no one can be up to any sort of shady, nefarious shenanigans by having multiple cards in a sleeve. Maybe during side decking, people are trying to like swap stuff out. I mean, that was arguably the reason why in the past they were so against double sleeving. The OCG double sleeve stuff, like every other game is perfectly okay with this. So it's so exciting to see that Konami finally came around to this. And man, the OCG double sleeving market is about to go crazy with new buyers from the TCG because that's really cool. We can now take better care of our cards. Maybe people want to buy more higher rarity cards because they're going to be more protected from that perspective. I mean, this is just really cool. It's something the players have been asking for so long. Good job on this one, Konami. So now we're on to Section H, covering tournament materials, and I gotta tell you, I don't know what the hell they were thinking with this change because this makes absolutely no sense. And for all you Endymion players out there, you are not gonna like this one. So if you scroll down here to the counters section, you can see here that it says counters must be added to cards in the appropriate quantity. Example, if card effects would place 4 counters on a card, duelists should add 4 counters rather than using a die placed to show 4. Do you know how absurd that is? Like, I genuinely wonder if whoever wrote these rules has ever played Endymion. When you're trying to manage spell counters on not just one card, but multiple cards, and especially when they are not just in intervals of 1, but like think about like Jackal King that's in 2s, and you're telling me now that anyone who wants to play Endymion has to bring like a handful of like 30 to 40 counters and manually has to place them each and every time they activate it instead of just flipping a die forward? That is just absolutely nonsensical, and I can't understand any justifiable reason for this. A lot of these changes I would say are actually very positive, but this just seems like a step backwards, and I really can't even see a good reason for why this would be the case. I guess you could say, oh, dice can like fumble around and like change the number, I guess, but I guess if your opponent's paying good enough attention, they should know what the spell counter count is, because that's both players' responsibilities to keep track of. So I don't know. This is just ridiculous. Do any other card games force you to manually place counters on cards? Like, I don't play Pokemon, so anyone who does, can you let me know that if you have to put specifically 10 damage counters at a time on your Pokemon, if that's how it works, or can you just use a die to do that times a multiple of 10? Because this just seems ridiculous. So now I want to move on to note-taking. This is something that Yu-Gi-Oh! Is very heavy-handed about, and I don't understand why. They're very militant compared to other card games, and this is just a Yu-Gi-Oh! Thing. I don't know. So let's quickly go through this. So note-taking is not allowed in sanctioned or official Yu-Gi-Oh! Events with the following exceptions. You must keep a written record of both duelist life points for each duel. Okay, we've already covered this. Again, that's like debatable as to whether or not that should even be the case, but let's roll with it. Tracking of mandatory effect reminders, tracking of turns and turn counters, tracking of effects or actions necessary to maintain a legal game state. Written records are the only acceptable form of note-taking. You may not use dice or other counters as a form of note-taking. Notes must be taken quickly so as to not disrupt the flow of the duel. Slow play and other penalties may apply if note-taking slows down the duel. Notes are considered public knowledge and must be provided to the opponent or tournament official upon request. The notes function of Neuron may not be used during a match. So again, keep that in mind, and you may want to familiarize yourself with what can and cannot be used on Neuron, but I think that's perfectly okay. So here are some examples here, and I think this is important to cover. So a duelist takes 1,000 points of damage to his life points. Both duelists should write down the damage taken. Duelists may record the source of the damage if done in a timely manner. During their turn, a duelist's Scarm Malbranch of the Burning Abyss is sent to the graveyard. The duelist may not make a note to resolve its searching effect during the end phase due to this being an optional effect. A mandatory effect states that the duelist may not draw a card during her next turn. The duelist may make a written note reminding her of this. A duelist activates the effect of their level 7 FA Dark Dragster to reduce its level by 3. The duelist can make a note such as FA Dark Drag level 4 in order to maintain an accurate game state due to it being an effect that will affect other aspects of the game. A duelist activates a card with a mandatory effect which lasts for 3 turns. Both duelists should track on paper how many turns have passed after the card's activation, and a duelist activates Eradicator Epidemic Virus and declares spell cards. They look at their opponent's hand for spell cards to destroy. The duelist may not write down any notes on the names of other cards in the opponent's hand, as the the information does not help maintain an accurate and legal game state. So I think these are all pretty good examples to cover here. Again, this last one in particular is just widely different from other TCGs, because other TCGs you can look at your opponent's hand and write the whole thing down, and I honestly think that makes for a more skillful experience. Like, most players are pretty good at remembering, but I don't know, I just think that's a little bit outdated. That's Yu-Gi-Oh!, so I guess I really shouldn't complain. But again, just make sure you know in terms of note-taking what can or cannot be done. I would say for the most part, this is generally the same as it was before, but there are a little bit more specifications as to what can and cannot be written down, and that could help you depending on the circumstances of what type of deck you're playing. Okay, now this is hilarious. I don't even think this section existed prior to this update. I could be wrong, but if there's a card that happens to come to mind when you think of loops or infinite loops in Yu-Gi-Oh!, you might know exactly where this is going. So they have this section on loops, and we're going to scroll down here to specifically infinite loops. And the reason I say that is because we're going to talk about this example right here. So let's go ahead and read this. Duelist A has a set pole position on the field. Duelist B has a face-up Dark Magician equipped with Magic Formula and a face-up Dark Magician Girl equipped with Axe of Despair. If Duelist A activates his set pole position, its spell protection is applied to Dark Magician, then to Dark Magician Girl, then back to Dark Magician. The players determine that this is an infinite loop that will not result in a victory condition, so they call a judge. The judge determines pole position is causing the loop, and pole position is sent to the graveyard, and play continues. They, instead of banning pole position, literally just decided that from a rules perspective, that a judge, in the instance of an infinite loop, a judge can come over and basically say, what card's determining the infinite loop? This one? Okay, send it to the graveyard, and you keep playing. That is just hilarious. This is just in the instance of a effect like pole position that's going to prevent the game from advancing forward, and now there's a way to essentially mitigate that and completely nullify any of those types of effects. Rip pole position. I'm really glad that they decided to do something about this. I just thought they should just ban pole position, and that would ultimately solve the problem, because there's not many cards that really do what pole position does, but I think this is probably a better way to go about it, but man, is it still funny. All right, so we're coming up on the end of the video here. Only a couple more rule changes I want to talk about. The next one is in regards to side decking. Right down here, it says you have less than 3 minutes to perform these tasks, and then talks about the side decking process. Now, previously, some players, because of the end of match procedures, want to drag out the side decking process for as long as possible, so then that way they could maybe drag the game into end of match procedure and try to cheese wins out of their opponent. I don't think this really stops people from doing it. It kind of just modifies the language slightly that deters people from doing it. I think the true core root issue here is the end of match procedures, and that should just be overhauled entirely. Anyone who's a longtime fan of the channel knows how vehemently I am against the end of match procedures. So I think this is like a fine change, but it doesn't really get at the true crux of the issue. And then last but not least, we're going to talk about something that's actually a very significant change and is helpful for anyone who likes to play with foreign language cards, or someone who may be traveling to a different country and doesn't have cards in the native language of where they are playing. So in the foreign language cards section, it talks about how you need to have a accurate translation on hand. Right here it says you either need to have a local language version of the card or have an accurate written version of the most recent card text. But the newest change, and this circles again back to Neuron coming in clutch, you can use the camera search function in Neuron to provide an accurate translation of the card. That's really, really cool, and I feel like that's just going to help anyone who likes to play with these types of cards, or again, maybe traveling around and doesn't have the native language. I think it just helps reduce the barrier, reduce some of the difficulty that causes at times, and I think that's a really great change. This is one of the cool things about implementing Neuron with Yu-Gi-Oh! And being a companion app. This is what it's supposed to do, just making it easier for everyone to access the game, make it so that tournaments fly by a lot smoother, and overall, I think this is a wonderful change. I think there were a lot of big changes in general that we talked about, but I want to know which ones are your favorite. Be sure to let me know down in the comments below. I'd really love to hear your guys' thoughts. I would say these changes overall are very positive. They did miss the mark a couple times here, but again, they can always amend these documents in the future, and so who knows? I think Konami just sometimes is slow to just update these types of things. They're making progress. I'll give them the benefit of the doubt. And again, coronavirus is still going on, so we may not be able to actually experience this in real life for quite some time, but it's nice to see they're starting to go in the right direction, and I look forward to seeing what other changes they implement in the future. So guys, that's going to wrap it up for the video. Let me know down in the comments what you guys think. I'd really love to hear your thoughts. Thank you guys so much for watching the video. video, be sure to like the video as always, subscribe to the channel for more amazing Yu-Gi-Oh content, and if you found this video informative, consider supporting me on Patreon or becoming a YouTube channel member. Just by showing your support in any way that you can, you're investing in my ability to continue bringing you amazing Yu-Gi-Oh content. So thanks so much again, and we'll see you next time. 1, 2, 3.